Thank you for joining me on the 1 year anniversary episode of the Pollen Nation Podcast. Today, I'll be interviewing Bracken Barker of Barker's Bees and Honey in northern Utah. Thank you for joining me today on the Pollen Nation Podcast. I'm speaking with Bracken from Utah today. He's a beekeeper over there, and he's going to share his experience on how he keeps bees and how he got started and anything he wants to say. So thank you for joining us today, Bracken. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited. So again, my name is Bracken Barker. I'm with Barker's Bees and Honey. I'm located here in northern Utah. I'm about 15, 20 minutes south of the Idaho border, so I'm about as far north as you can go. I'm running right now just a little over 40 colonies. I don't want to count some of them because we're getting ready to go into winter here, and I'm not sure that they're going to make it. I
Mhm.
just picked up some colonies from a buddy that I bought. He ended up becoming allergic to them and had to get out of the hobby, so
Well,
I picked up some of his stuff, and they got a little bit of I don't want to say neglect, but he wasn't able to tend to them the way he, wanted to and the way he tried because of his allergic reaction. So, but yeah, I run a hundred and about a little over 100 acre farm. It's about 110 acres with my father. I'm a lineman for the city. I work on power lines, and I got four kids and one on the way.
wow.
And I just started building my first house. So I got a lot on my plate going on,
Yeah,
but
no kidding.
this beekeeping is what keeps me sane and going. So I'm trying to turn it into, I guess I don't know if I quite say I'm a sideliner yet, but I mean it takes a fair amount of my time, and with the 40 colonies, I like running the farm and having the bees. The farm kind of comes first, it's priority, and then the bees are definitely a close second. And I really love how beekeeping and agriculture work hand in hand together. And
Hmm.
that's my joy of beekeeping and what I enjoy the most out of beekeeping. It's not the honey, it's not the money, it's not the bees. I mean, it is the bees, but it's caring and taking care of something that's alive. That's I love the husbandry part of it, of taking care of these insects and trying to figure out problems when they get sick. And just like I like keeping cattle and horses and dogs, just animals in general. And I really like the bees, and I love the benefits that come with the bees. I love the honey and the little bit of money that I make on the side. And I'm trying to get it a little bit into the almond pollination. I'd like to talk to you and pick your brain a little bit more about that one, but
Yeah,
that's a little bit about me and where I'm at. So,
that's awesome. So, what's the temperature over there right now?
right now it's actually pretty dang warm. It's like 70 degrees, which is super unordinary for us this time of year. Usually well, our lows yesterday were 37.
Ooh,
So, I mean, it's quite the fluctuation between temperature. We go from really cold at night to really hot during the day.
man, that's rough. It's about I think it's about 88 degrees over here. I'm sweating like a pig, and
Yeah, and you have humidity.
yeah, we do have a lot of humidity, which is nice when when you're grafting larvae. They don't dry out so quick, but we had a little cold snap. I don't know, it was a week ago or so, and it wasn't that cold, obviously, I mean, it was maybe 50 degrees or something, and I was griping. I was like, it's freezing. I was walking around with a jacket. I couldn't stand it. I'm just not used to it when you're over here in subtropical climate zone, but that's not bad. I mean, honestly, when I was picturing Utah, I was thinking like you guys were, it was snowing already.
Well, it should be. That's the thing is last year before Halloween, we had snow on the ground and it was cold. In fact, I'm looking at my forecast right now and it says Thursday our low is 27 degrees.
Oh,
So it's It's coming, it looks like. We got a little storm maybe on Monday and Tuesday. So hopefully it comes. I'm tired of the heat. I don't do very well in the heat. I like cold.
Yeah, yeah, well, I guess yeah, in the right spot for it. So if you've got those hard freezes coming in, I mean hard in my opinion from for Florida, does that so wipe out a lot of you guys' flowers up there when you get those freezes?
Yeah, that'll take care of most of what's left blooming. Most of the stuff that's around now is just people's, flowers on the side of their house and stuff. Our crops are all done. The alfalfa's done. The corn's done. Grain's all harvested. So basically, the stuff that's left is just the little piddly plants here and there that people have around their houses. But yeah, after a couple good freezes, they'll be done and we'll officially be into winter.
Are your hives still bringing in pollen at all, or is it kind of settled over?
Yes, there is a little, but not much. It is very, very little. I've actually got some pollen sub on mine right now, so just trying to keep them going. I'm taking my bees down to California no, not next week, on the November 14th,
Hmm.
and I'll be taking them down myself this time. I'm going to a place in Chico, California.
Oh wow, are you taking them there just 'cause for the warmer climate, or are you gonna also do the almond pollination?
So I have a contact down there that I'm going to take them down to his place and drop them off, and then he is going to get them into the almonds with his bees in a contract. So
Oh, that's is that your first time going?
this is my this will be my third year,
Oh
but this
wow.
will be the first time that I've taken them down personally.
Yeah.
I sent them with a commercial guy the last 2 years on a semi.
Hmm.
And the first year I had really, really good luck. Bees came back booming and it was awesome. I was able to make a bunch of splits. My bees were miles ahead of the bees that were left here in Utah. I was splitting mine, and some of the winter bees coming out of winter yet hadn't even been brooding up yet that were
Wow.
here in Utah. So, mine were way ahead. But then the second year, I also had really good luck, but there was some misfortunate communication between me and the guy that I was sending them with. And long story short, we no longer are going to do business together. So
Yeah.
I ended up, my theory is if you want it done right, do it yourself. So I decided I was going to try it myself this year and see how it goes. And if it doesn't work out with me doing it, and if it's too much, then maybe next year I'll just try keeping them here. But it's hard on the bees here in Utah in the winter time. It's not as hard as some places, like Canada and stuff, but we get a lot of moisture and a lot of cold and snow, and the bees are just surviving. They're not living, I mean they are living, but they're not producing or anything. They're just surviving on what they have left.
You must be totally brutalist through the winter then.
Yeah, we do. There might be some, like, we last year we had a winter that was semi-warm, and we might have had a little brood that stayed through during that, but for the most part, it gets pretty cold and they go pretty broodless.
Wow, that's crazy. Like even here, like I've got little 5 frame nukes, and they'll have a couple frames of brood over here for us. I mean, I will say I think last January we had a few nights where it hit like I want to say it hit close to 20 degrees, and it knocked out a few of the small hives, but generally we keep brood year round, and I move them over to like wild mustard fields, and that comes after the peanuts and the cotton here is harvested during the winter, and man, they're hauling in pollen. If it's over 50 degrees or definitely 60 or above, which it usually is for the winter, they're just piling in pollen. So, which also means, our mites never shut down. So you're constantly pumping Amitraz to them or whatever you're using to try and keep them down. So you have to watch it. But yeah, when they hit to California, they're a little more, I don't know, they're a little nicer, I guess, than some of the northern colonies. We go through an almond broker, and that's usually what he tells us. He likes the southern colonies a little better because they come a little stronger, and I get it. Yeah, I don't really have to do much to them. Now I'll tell you, your feed bill goes really high because they're growing all the time, so they're eating all
Right.
the time, and Man, we've already burned through, I don't even know, thousands of gallons of syrup, and I'm still trying to put weight on them. And because if I don't, they'll starve to death because they just won't stop laying.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, mine are slowing down and I try not to feed too much liquid once it starts getting, below 30 degrees or colder because I don't want that moisture and condensation in the hive.
Oh yeah, how do you keep them warm? I saw some people up north will wrap them with blankets or something like that.
Yeah, so there's some people use that tar paper that you put on like the side of your house, like when you're building it, or I have seen some blankets. I personally do not wrap any of mine. I just make sure they have a good lid on them and make sure they're dry. If they've got a big hole in it in the top, I try to get that replaced before winter time. But the ones that I have kept here and overwintered, I've had success overwinter them. It's just they got to stay dry, they got to be healthy, and they got to weigh a ton of bricks before you get into winter time because if they don't, they won't have enough resources to make it through the winter.
That makes sense. My old boss used to say we would go and like start tipping our hives on the pallets in November to kind of weight check them, see if we need to get one more round of feed, Alf. And his thing was like, oh, if you don't grunt, when you lift the hive, it's not heavy enough. That was the standard.
Yeah, that's how it's got to be here. They got to weigh like a brick.
I guess yeah, they won't take any food when it gets cold. Can you feed them at all, or is it just
I do use some of that Hive Alive fondant stuff, or I make my own sugar patties. Like I take and bake a sugar patty in a big tray, and I break it up so it's just solid sugar. And I will set that on top of the colonies, and they will eat that through the winter.
that's pretty good. There's a guy here. I heard that he has some kind of sugar mixture that he'll kind of melt somehow. It'll be kind of like liquid sugar, and he'll pour it into his lids, and he has rims around his lid apparently, and it dries so the sugar hardens, and then he puts those lids on top of the hives when he's shipping them to California. And I always wondered if it worked, but I guess you're saying they will eat that dry sugar.
Yeah, in fact, there's some people that'll put a piece of newspaper on top of the frames, and then they just straight up pour straight sugar right on top, and they feed them that way.
Oh wow, just like cane sugar, like you buy at the store.
Yep.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
And they say it'll help having, if there is a little bit of moisture that gets in that hive, that sugar will absorb that moisture a little bit.
Hmm.
But I bake mine down into like an actual sugar cake or a sugar patty. Mine's solid.
That's pretty cool. What would you say is like the minimum frame population you've got to have in a hive for it to survive the winter?
Well, I had a single deep last year that I overwintered that only had about 4 frames of bees, but they had, a fair amount of resources. They had a good pollen storage and a good nectar storage and honey. And then I did have sugar bricks on top of them. So they made it through with 4. There's some guys that I've seen winter with nukes. The most common is okay, well I'm gonna go off on a little tangent here. I like you said, there's certain ways to do things, and there's ways that work better, there's ways that don't, there's ways that are people are scared to try. When I first got into it here, I was told it has to be a double deep and it has to be, you know, they have to both weigh a ton in order to make it through the winter. Well, then as I got more into the beekeeping world and started finding, like Ian Stepler and stuff, I'm like, well, how come he can overwinter bees in a single deep box and it's way colder and he keeps them way longer in, controlled weather than I do. So why can't I do it and keep it through a single box? Well, turns out you can. You just got to be on top of it and, make sure they do have that good feed. But I think a lot of people in beekeeping are scared to try new things because they're used to what works, right? Which is
Sure.
fine. But I like to do things just because I want to see if it works.
Yeah.
you tell me I can't do it, and I wanna find out why it can't.
No, I think that's the right attitude. I'm the same way. I'm constantly always tweaking and experimenting things all the time and wiped out a lot of colonies doing it, but I always write down my results and what I did. And now I look back and I've got all the years worth of data I've collected and it's so invaluable and it's way better to make those mistakes when you're just kind of starting out and you don't have that many colonies because, you're not going to just bankrupt yourself so much. When you start running large numbers and you've got big bills to pay and everything, it gets harder to experiment because yeah, you're like, well, if I do this on a bunch of colonies, I might lose my business, or you're just so busy all the time that you don't even have time to run those little experiments anymore. So now
Right.
I think you've got the right mindset, definitely, and I think that's the way to learn. And I'll be honest with you, like what you were saying, a lot of times it's the older beekeepers, not to knock them, but the guys have been doing it for 30, 40 years. They did find a system that worked, and that's great. Maybe they were like us when they were kind of a little younger and starting out, but they do seem a little more stuck in their ways sometimes, if I'm just being honest. And it's usually the next generation of beekeepers that I'm kind of seeing that are coming out that are way more open to experimentation and I don't know if it's just a product of being a new beekeeper or a younger beekeeper or what it is, but everybody I talk to that's 30s or in their 20s, they're trying like all kinds of stuff, and it is great because you get to pick their brains and hear all kinds of cool stuff from them. So I think you're on the right track there.
Yes. Yeah, I like to experiment. And if I do it, I usually pick, like you said, one or two colonies and try it. Like last year I overwintered I think three deeps, three single deeps. This year I'm going into winter with like eight or nine single deeps, and I'm not going to run everything. I'm not going to put them all in single deeps just because the ones worked, but
Hmm.
I'm testing and trying out new things and seeing, eventually I'd like to get to where I'm, single deep. I love that single brood management, you know, strategy, how people do that. And I really want to try to adapt that into my operation a lot more.
What do you mean by that? The single brood strategy?
Or the single brood management. Have you heard that?
I don't think so.
So in like June or July, so okay, well let me back up. Springtime, you come out of winter. And if it's a single deep, you add another box to it and you let the queen go up and down in those two boxes. And I run all double deeps, just like I think that's what you run, ain't it? All deeps.
I run about half and half double deeps.
Oh, okay. So I run all deeps. I don't have any mediums or halves or yeah, I got all deep boxes.
Mhm.
But in the springtime, you add that box, queen goes up, starts laying, you put a box of comb on there and she gets up there and they build that nest up. And then once your flow, right before your flow starts, I take and I shake all the bees down into the very bottom box and I put a queen excluder on and keep the queen down there. And then it's kind of like your split methods, but I will put that box above there. And then as the brood hatches out of that second box, they start backfilling that with honey. And I keep the brood, I put all the brood down in the bottom box, except a few couple frames into that second box. And then the rest is just empty comb. And they will fill those boxes and I'll add them and I keep the queen and all the brood down in the single box.
Okay, so you're making honey off single deeps.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah, okay. Yeah, yeah. I started doing that. I think I started doing that last year. Which yeah, I just split everything down to singles, when they come back from California at the start of spring and then we throw on whatever spare boxes we have above an excluder. And yeah, you do harvest a way more honey with that method, I found. It's like because if you make honey off a double deep and they're not already packed to the gills full of feed, they're just going to store it all themselves and you're not going to get anything.
Yeah.
And our honey production increased a lot when we started doing like what you're saying, making honey off singles. The one downside I found is, man, is when you take that honey off, if you don't have another flow coming on right away, you got to feed them ASAP because they'll starve to death in a heartbeat.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why the double deep thing I think is pretty popular over here is because it does give you that if you run the doubles it gives you a little bit more time, and they do have a little bit more resources. But yeah, you're right. You take those honey supers away from a single brood management colony, and yeah, they'll starve themselves out real quick.
Yeah, I think we'll have when I pull honey off, shoot, we'll have probably 8 frames of brood or something like that. So you got like a frame or two maybe that's got honey, probably also pollen, and that's what wiped us out last year. I mean, we took a huge hit on our colonies because we had a bad drought and we were just behind. I bought some new honey machines and it was just chaos. And I think we pulled honey in August, which over here, most people pull honey in like the start of July. So we were already a month behind. August is, in my opinion, the worst month here in Florida because it's a terrible dearth. And I pulled them, and by the time the feed was delayed when I ordered the syrup, and by the time, it takes so long to fill all the buckets and put them on, we got decimated. And I almost went back to making honey in doubles this year, but it was such a good honey year for us. Like, and they're still bringing in some kind of nectar even now. I took the risk again, and I'm glad I did because that we didn't lose. I don't think really any to starvation. And we got a lot more honey. And so yeah, you're right. You just got to watch it. And I'll say too, if you make honey off singles and you hit them with whatever mite treatment you have, I think we threw in some Apivar in July after we took the honey off because the bees are just kind of all the broods packed into that one box. It seems like your
Yep.
mite treatment is way more effective.
Yep.
And I noticed there were some colonies I didn't split. There were some hive and ass and double deeps. They were packed full of mites. I mean, they got so sick. I'm still trying to beat them back down. But all the singles, man, just the brood looks beautiful. And I did the same treatment on both. And
Right. Just more confined. And I think I mean, you
mhm,
use two strips rather than four, per hive and
mhm,
or whatever it is. And it's just to me, in my opinion, in Bracken's opinion, it just makes more sense to run the single brood, less equipment. Sure, you got to be, on top of it, like you said, but that's the fun part. That's what I like is
yeah,
the maintaining and keeping. So to me, I want the little bit more of the challenge because that's what I like. That's what I enjoy doing.
yeah. No, it's great. And if you have one that fails or whatever, you just stack it onto another one and either boom, you got a box of honey if they were, queenless and plugged out with honey, or you got
Yeah.
a crazy good double deep there if it's already packed full of honey and pollen, all that bee bread from like a queenless colony, you stack it on a single that's got a queen and you got a banging hive right there and you
Yeah,
can
it,
re-split
it
that sucker down here. And a few weeks later you come back and you can re-split it again, no problem.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I also want to get just super self-sustaining. My goals too here with the beekeeping is I just last year I did my first time grafting and I actually had pretty good success. I can't give you like exact numbers. I could if I really went back into my notes, but off top hand, I put 30 or so and I ended up with 12 mated queens, so less than 50%. But to me, I told myself I'd be happy if I got one.
Yeah.
You know, but I'll get better as time goes, and I'm super excited to do that again this spring and try to completely be self-sufficient on my own queens. I really enjoyed that. There's something about pulling that egg out and then watching it grow into a full mated queen. I got those little styrofoam mini mating boxes, and man, what a process. That is so cool to see it go from an egg to a mated queen and laying eggs. It's just phenomenal.
No, I agree. That's what we started converting over to those little styrofoam minis. Are you running the three or the four frame ones?
It's got three.
Yeah, I think that one's better. We tried both, and I found out in the four frame ones, even though I bought it because I was like, well, they're a little more forgiving. If I get behind a week, they're not going to abscond on me. And what I found was the four frame ones, at least the ones we bought, and they're from China, some knockoff brand, and
Yeah.
there's a weak spot around where the lid connects, so the bees will chew through it when they're sealed up for 3 days. And for them to settle when you're building from scratch. And I just kept building them and building them and building them, and the bees just kept getting out of there, getting out. I was like, what is going on? And I started finally seeing the little chew holes, and then I noticed they can't chew out of the three frames because it's just a much thicker styrofoam.
Right.
So yeah, I kind of wasted some money on those. I tried patching them up in different ways, but nothing really worked. So we're gonna
Mm.
just convert over to just the three frame. So you gambled on the right one there.
Yeah, I've enjoyed my little three frames. It's just fun. I'll tell you a little bit. I grafted a queen, grafted an egg, put the queen cell inside the frame. She hatched, she mated. Um, I took her out and there was some eggs in that little box. And I was, again, this is just me testing. And I was like, well, and it was still packed full of bees. And I was like, I'm going to just see what they do with those eggs in this little three frame. So I left it, came back in a month or whatever again. I had another queen in there that was mated and laying. I did that 4 times off of that one little three frame. And all I did was keep pumping it full of some sugar syrup.
Wait a minute, you let them raise their own queens? That's what you're saying in the minis?
Yeah, in that mini mating nook, just because I wanted to see if they could do it, and they would. They would either build one or two cells every time, and I would pick the best cell, and I would crush, I'd crush the other one if it was bad. But they would, after the queen had mated, I let her lay in those little minis, and then I took her out, and they just did like an emergency queen and built another one, and I did that, and I got 4 queens off of that one box.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I've seen them do it, but I generally don't let them. Like if I see them making a cell, we just throw in one of our cells. But it's more of trying to keep them all in the same timeline, you know.
Yeah.
And because if they raise their own, I know it takes about a month. Whereas if I can give them a cell that's about to hatch, I can have a queen in 2 weeks. And but yeah, I've seen it a few times. I didn't really think they could do it that often, but that's pretty cool. They're so tiny, they just don't have any resources. It's amazing they can survive so long.
Yeah, they had it. They had it. That's what I kept thinking. I thought I'd go back and I'd be like, all right, this time they'll be done. I'd open it up and be like, nope, there's another queen and she's laying.
What's kind of your queen rearing timeline up there, like for the months?
Um, well, I just started when I seen drone brood, and that's usually end of May. And then I had one requeen, let's see, 2, 3 weeks ago. But like I said, it's been a pretty warm fall. So probably till about August, September maybe.
Wow, that's so short. You're talking about end of May to end of September or something like that?
Yeah, it's not very long.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, you have to really be on it then, I guess. If you're, that must be tough to be a queen breeder because man, you must really have to have everything down like really well organized because to pump out enough queens to make it profitable enough.
Well, I mean, like I said, I didn't have super great success doing it, but I'm dabbling just to find I'm still learning the whole queen thing. That's a whole different ball game.
Oh yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, that's crazy. We usually start making cells around mid-February is when I start grafting over here, which sometimes they don't turn out well. They may not mate well. I found this year they didn't start really mating well until about the second half of March. So, but I'm still grafting I'm grafting today. And we're still
That's
getting
crazy.
not amazing takes, you know. It's not like we're in spring, but and it's been here too. It's warmer. It's better than last year. Um, I remember everything was kind of shut down by this time last year. So yeah, it's like you. It's it just seems warmer. The flowers are blooming longer. Uh,
Yep.
it's over here. It's been a better year as a whole. And yeah, that's great. That's why I want to do queens here because it's like you can just shoot and raise queens like I don't even know 9 months out of the year or something.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I don't know of any guys around here that really produce. I mean, there's a couple guys that produce queens here and there, but I don't think they produce them on the scale of like, people in your area and stuff do.
Hmm. Well, that's pretty cool though. Even still, yeah, I guess you have to really have your schedule mapped out, I guess, when you have a shorter growing season. I don't know. Are there any, do you think there's any benefits to being in a colder climate to being like in mine in a warmer climate for the bees?
No, I don't. I
Hmm.
don't think so. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't done it enough to know if there would be a benefit of doing it. I don't know. When it's warm like this And there's, I mean, like I said, the very few plants that are around are just the little flowers here and there. But the problem is it gets 60, 70 degrees and there is no nectar flow. There's
Mm.
nothing. So when we get done with ours, I prefer it to just get cold right away because then my bees do just stay, if they're flying and they're out there dying, I know they're dying in the box too, but when they're out there running around and flying around and not having any resources to bring in, it makes it a lot, they starve themselves out quicker.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely.
So I do like the cold, like when the honey flows, and if you want to talk about honey flow, like ours is short too. I harvest honey once a year. That's it. And I harvest on Labor Day, so September, and that's for the whole year. Um, but once that's done, there's a little bit of bloom for them, but we pretty much go right into feeding, and then I hope for cold as soon as possible because then they get more of that. You know what I'm saying? They
Almost
they shut down.
they shut down, almost going to a hibernation state, stop burning
Right.
so many calories.
Mhm.
That's great. How many pounds per honey do you guys make on average up there?
So let's see. Last year I had 1,300 pounds of honey and I harvested from, I think I had 18 colonies. Let me see. Let me hear and do some math real quick. Yeah. No, I had maybe 20 colonies. This year I had, let's see, 24, 26 colonies and I got only 800 pounds of honey.
Oh well.
So it was quite a bit worse. It was a lot drier this year. It totally just depends. I don't know if there is a true average, how much it seems to fluctuate so much.
It does, yeah. People always say here, and I rarely make that. I'm not a big honey producer. There are some guys that make tons of honey, but a lot of people around here say you get about 30 to 60 pounds of honey. I've got a friend of mine I was talking to the other day, and he runs like 150 colonies or something. He's really experienced. He's been doing it his whole life, and honey's like his main specialty. He made more honey on 150 hives than we had on, I don't know, whatever we put on honey production this year. I probably had 1,500 colonies or something trying to make honey this
Oh,
year.
wow.
He still beat me. And every year he's been asking me every year now. He's like, "How much honey did you make?" And I tell him, he's like, "Oh, well, I made twice as much as you did or something crazy." And he always likes to say making honey's an art form. So I think probably just because I'm still fairly new at beekeeping, only been doing it like 8 years myself, that I just don't really have the flows down because I know you've got to like pick them up and move them to this nectar flow. As soon as it's done, move them to the next nectar flow. And I think some of it too is just acquiring enough bee yards, and that just takes years of trial and error. And there's a friend of mine, he's in the same town as me, and he's a fifth generation beekeeper. So, man, they've been doing it since the dark ages, basically. And I was talking to him the other night, and I told him, I'm feeding my colonies now. I'm giving them their 6 gallon of corn syrup to really plug them out. And I asked him, I was like, "Hey, man, how many, how many gallons of syrup have you fed your colonies?" And he was like, "I haven't fed my colonies even one drop." And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And he's like, "Yeah, he's just so good at moving them from flow to flow that he doesn't have to feed them. Now he's about to bring him back down from Georgia because he had him up there making. Not only did he not have to feed them, but he made like several barrels of cotton honey.
Really?
Yeah, it's just because I mean he's extremely good. Obviously, he literally grew up with a hive tool in his hand, but his family has been here for so many generations that they've got that like down pat. They know where the bee. They've already culled out all their bad bee yards, and that's what I have. I have a lot of bad bee yards that don't make honey, and I'll set them there, and I'll go, oh, this year they'll get something, and then I won't even get 30 pounds off a 50 colony yard, and I'm like, I got to stop this. And and the older guys will laugh at me because they see me I'm kind of struggling, but it's just kind of how it is. I just sort of get a new bee yard and I drop 50 hives there and I go we'll see. And, if we get something great, and if we don't, okay, maybe I don't put them there next year. But those guys have been doing it so long, they're already done. They already have bee yards that make, 60 pounds or whatever per hive. And definitely jealous of that. But I mean, they earned it too. They've been doing it so long.
Right.
So I guess that's what they mean when they say it's an art form. I mean, I think a lot of it's just having good bee yards and knowing when your nectar's bloom starts and when it stops. And down here we have something called, I doubt you have it up in Utah, but we have like a swamp tree here called Tupelo, and
Yeah,
it's
we
really
don't have that.
popular. And people will pay like twice as much money for it. And it blooms, it's a really small window. It only blooms for like a couple weeks a year, and you've got to move your bees into the swamp. Some guys put them on like pontoon boats and sit them on the river.
Seriously?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have seen it before, and
I'd like to see that.
it's crazy, man. They'll do it because it's so valuable, and they basically just float them down the river, and they, just park the boat, I guess, or and right under these tupelo trees, and they get their honey, and then boom, they move them back on the land. It's I could never point it out if it wasn't blooming, but when it blooms, it's weird. It's got it's like a little green ball that's got these little pistons. I don't know that's sticking out. Like I don't know if you guys have sweet gum trees up there.
I don't know.
Maybe not. There's something called a sweet gum tree here, and it has these little green spiky balls that kind of looks like a Tupelo bloom, I guess is the
Oh
closest thing to
yeah,
describe
I
it.
just Googled it. Okay,
Yeah.
there's yeah, Tupelo. Okay, I see what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. You see those little green balls there, and
Yeah.
you put your honey supers on as soon as it starts blooming. But then as soon as those balls start falling off, you got to yank it off because you got gallberry blooming around that time over here. You got privet, and they'll put out a lot of nectar, and they'll water your Tupelo down. And people are crazy about Tupelo here. Like we send it off to a lab to have it analyzed. They'll count the pollen grains under a microscope, and legally it's got to be 51% or more Tupelo pollen to sell it as Tupelo. And some guys are purists, they want 70% pure or something. So the
Jeez.
purer it is, the prettier it is, and the better you can sell it. And I don't think it's this way anymore, but the old beekeeper that taught me, he's been doing it for like decades. I may be wrong on the date, but I swear he said like it was like in the 70s or the 80s or something. There's a town called Weewahichka, a little bit south of me, and that's where most people make most of their Tupelo. And he said there would be beekeepers putting their hives on these pontoon boats on the river out in the swamp. And it was like people were so crazy about making that Tupelo. They would go out at night and drill holes in people's pontoon boats and sink the boats out on the river with the hives on them. If you were moving into another guy's territory, or they used to burn the boats, he said people were like nuts. And I've not heard of that, myself recently or anything happening, but
Sounds like some modern or some olden day pirate stuff.
that's it, man. It's like being in the mafia or something. They just send a hitman take your hives out, and I've heard of people like picking up people's hives and moving them away, because like some commercial guy will come and drop 100 hives next to your yard, and a guy will go out there with his bobcat and load them up and not hurt them, but move them a couple miles down the road and set them on the side of the road where you can see them. I've heard of that happening. And
That's
people
crazy.
get territorial. I mean, if you've got bills to pay, I kind of get it. Now, if you've got your hives like way back in the woods and people can't see it from the road, nobody knows, you that's what you do. But I've seen guys have hives on one side of the road, like in a field, bright, clear as day, and then another guy coming and drop them right across on the other side of the road just to spite the guy, and that's crazy to me. And I'm like, man, that guy's going to come out with diesel fuel or something and spray your hives in the middle of the night, and you're going to lose
Yeah.
everything. Some beekeepers are crazy, but I was wondering about the honey production because I see like the Canadian beekeepers and stuff on YouTube, and they're making like insane honey crops. They're up there with
Yeah.
ladders and stuff, putting on honey supers.
Yeah. I know do you know of Ian Stepler or
He's the
watching?
Canadian
Yeah,
beekeeper
the
blog,
Canadian
right?
beekeeper.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that guy.
Yeah, me too. He's got, he's got the farm, 4,000 acres that he can plant or however, it's probably more than that. I'm probably lowballing him, but they get all that canola and he can time it so perfect and set it. If I could get if I could get that many people in my area or have that much like alfalfa fields, or something, because I let my alfalfa fields bloom and I get some honey off them.
Mhm.
But if I had, 4,000 acres of it in one area that I could, load up with bees, you could really sink in the honey. But the problem is cutting alfalfa before it blooms, you can actually sell it for more money
Hmm.
because it's got more protein and it's got more nutrition in it when it before it blooms. So as a farmer, you want to cut it before it blooms. As a beekeeper, you want it to bloom.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, I
so
get that. That's why a lot of the guys move their hives up to Georgia and put them on the cotton fields up there because it's like if you're in an area like Bainbridge, Georgia, or Donaldsonville, Georgia, it's just like those are like farming communities. So there's just hundreds, if not thousands, of acres of
yeah,
monocropping. You know, it's cotton or peanuts or corn or soybeans. And I don't know why they do it and don't do it down here, but they irrigate their cotton up there. And if cotton gets a lot of water, and the irrigation system will usually cause it to get a lot of water, obviously, and that'll cause it to produce nectar. And that's where a lot of guys can, make a honey crop off that cotton. And down here in Florida, because we're just really right on the border where I'm at of Georgia and Alabama, they don't irrigate the cotton, so you don't really get anything. You get pollen, but I rarely get nectar unless you have like a ton of rain. And it's kind of the same deal. I'm always the yard I was looking at today. I saw the farmer was already had harvested the peanuts, and he didn't harvest his cotton and his cotton too, and he didn't harvest the cotton and the peanuts last year until like December or something. And I
yeah.
want them to harvest it and disc that soil in because we get the mustard and the radish that blooms wild in those fields, and that's what gives us our winter pollen. Man, and I used to drive by every day. I'm like, man, will that guy get out here and get those peanuts and get that cotton, get it out of here?
Get it out of
Because
here.
I want that mustard, man. And he would not do it. And this year, he's already done it, and the mustard's already starting to come up. So I'm like, yeah, it's gonna be a good winter because we staged like 500 colonies in that area just so they're close to the house, so I can pop them on the semis really quick. And so I hope it's gonna be a good winter for us. But yeah, I see what you're saying. You're always kind of like, I know the farmers have a life, and they probably couldn't care less about somebody with some beehives, but I'm watching those fields all the time, and I'm like, come on, man, come on, man.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of how I was before I got into beekeeping. I was a farmer. I didn't care. It's not that we didn't care, but it was different. Now I do. I look at farming so much different. I look at all the vacant space that, we keep barren dirt because we don't want the puncher weeds and the wild weeds growing. And I'm looking at it thinking, what can I plant right there that'll produce for the bees? What
Yeah.
got all this soil, let's put it to use, and the alfalfa starts coming and I, drag my feet and hope that the, you know, swather doesn't quite get there yet or whatever, but just changes your perspective when you got bees involved.
Oh yeah, definitely, and it
I
makes me
think if
think.
the
Huh? Go ahead.
I think if the farming community, the farmers and the beekeepers could come together better and like I don't know, if you could get farmers, I'm always teasing my neighbor because he's got like 800 acres, 700 acres, something like that. I always tell him, let your alfalfa blooms this year. Don't cut them. Just let it bloom. Or he has a field that goes barren for a year, and I'm like, plant sweet clover in that or something. I'm
Yeah.
always trying to get him to do stuff for my bees now, and I think if we could all get on a page, man, you could really help each other out.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I've thought about giving the guys that farm down the road from Avlike. They know who I am. I've just never really spoken to them directly, and I know who they are. They're a big farming family in the community. But I want to just go give them some honey. Be like, hey man, can you get those peanuts a month early this year? And they'll
Yeah,
probably look
just
at me like, you kidding? I'm sure they have thousands of acres, and they're probably like, get out of here, man. I know they
yeah,
got
go away.
crews and stuff. They got these massive John Deere tractors. They're not going to reroute their operation for me. But yeah, I agree. If we could work together, I've noticed um, the when I put beehives on like a new location, if it's kind of like somebody doesn't have a lot of land, it's a family that's got 5, 10 acres or something. and they've stopped mowing the grass as much since the hives have been there. Because they'll tell me and they'll go, oh well, we see the bees on the bahia grass or whatever every morning, and we see them getting pollen on this and that, and they're like, we don't really want to disturb them, so we'll let our grass grow up. And I'm like, yeah, go ahead, why not? And it's better for them anyways. I was like, I use that excuse when I don't mow my farm. People go, "Oh, your farm is like a jungle," and I go, "Oh, it's for the biodiversity, you
But it's
know."
good for the bees.
Yeah, that's what I tell them. And I was like, "It's really, I just hate mowing the grass." But everybody's like, "Oh, yeah, that makes sense. I didn't think about that," you know. And they don't realize I'm just lazy and hate mowing the grass. But it's a good excuse as a beekeeper. And there's a lady down the road from me. We got some hives. She had a whole. Do you guys have goldenrod up there?
Yeah, we do.
Is it still blooming?
No.
Oh, I've still got a little bit. Ours is almost done. It's been kind of blooming mostly October, some in September. And I got a lady who's got a bunch of land and she had this massive field of goldenrod. I mean, just slam full. The bees were plugged out, like pollen bound, and from all the pollen coming in. And I came by the other day and she just slammed bush hogged it down to the dirt. And and I was like, I was like, what? Why did you do that? And I didn't say anything to her, but she came up to me after I was done working the bees and she's like, well, I saw the grass was really tall. It must have been hard for you to work and drive through it all. And I went ahead and mowed for you. And I was like, oh man, I wish I had just said something to her. She was trying to be helpful, but
Right.
she like wiped out like an all you can eat buffet for the bees for like a month. But yeah, communication is helpful. And you're right. When you have bees, you see the world a little different. You see flowers and stuff differently. And when you don't have bees, you don't think about that stuff. No, I don't
Nope,
think.
you don't. You don't. And neither does anybody else. It's a pretty flower. Sure, but
Hmm.
look at all the insects that are benefiting from it.
Yeah.
Not that I, I don't want to sound like a tree hugger or anything, and not
Yeah.
that but but it's just a whole different perspective. Russian olive trees. I used to hate Russian olive trees, and now I look at them and they're a pretty good bloom for us, and the bees love them. So now I'm like, oh, sweet, Russian olive trees.
Yeah.
Versus, oh, look at that obnoxious tree that is everywhere. Now it's like, sweet.
I know you said you make honey off alfalfa, right? What else? What are the other main honey flows up there?
Alfalfa is pretty much, I mean, there's a lot of just wildflower stuff. We have rabbit brush. That's kind of more of a fall one though. I don't get a whole lot of nectar off that, but like dandelions, clover, yellow clover, sweet clover, crimson clover,
Yeah.
stuff like that. Mostly just ground crops like hairy vetch is one. Um, and then as far as like trees, we do get some maple trees that, produce a little bit. I think they get mostly pollen off that, not necessarily nectar, but
Yeah.
the Russian olives, I know they get some nectar off of them. And then there's some bushes. I can't remember what the bushes are called off top hand, but I'm not super great on the floriculture and like you said, the flows. I don't know. I'm not like some of the beekeepers that can say, "Oh yeah, this is in bloom right now. The bees are bringing this in." I don't know. I just know they're bringing something in.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's fine. It's funny, like a lot of the plants. I mean, obviously, I know dandelions and stuff, but a lot of the plants you're naming, I'm like, I've never heard of these plants. I don't know. I don't. I was like, this guy's making up these names. Like it's crazy that like you didn't know the sweet gum or the tupelo or something. It's crazy. Like there's just so that diversity, just on the other side of the country on these totally different plants. I mean, it's different climates. It makes sense, but it's amazing the bees are just like on it, like they're like, oh, we don't care what climate we're in. They're going to find the nectar, they're going to find the pollen, and they're going to adapt to that climate. I just think that's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Another one that I forgot to mention, which is pretty big. I live next to some orchards that are peach trees and apricots.
Hmm.
Apricots, peach trees, and cherry trees. In the springtime we get those, and there's quite a few of those around.
Do the farmers do a lot of pollination up there? Do they rent hives for that?
Um, Very few do. I have a buddy that owns an orchard that I put some in there for him, and then he kind of trades. We can go get all the sweet cherries we want and peaches. he doesn't pay me, but we kind of have just a good friendship. It benefits me and helps him, and
Yeah.
it's a win-win. But as far as people actually putting stuff around, I mean, there's plenty of beekeepers that put them around, but I don't know if they're making much money. And if they are, it's probably only 15, $20 a colony.
Yeah, I think around here, watermelon pollination is a big thing, or blueberries, and even some cantaloupe. And I've always the average price range from what I've heard. I don't do that, but my buddies that do it, they usually tell me you get about 35 to 65 a colony, give or take, um, for whatever for 6 weeks or whatever, they need to be pollinated for. But it doesn't pay as good as, California if they're paying $200 a colony.
Right.
I mean, so you take out the semi and the broker, and then you got $125 a colony at the end of the
Yeah.
day. But it still doesn't touch that almond pollination. Say you did queens, you do honey. Do you do nukes or packages or?
I don't do any packages. I did sell a few nukes last year. That was my first time selling nukes, and
Mhm.
so far I think they're doing pretty decent from what I've heard from the people.
That's good.
Um, it's how it is. You give somebody a hive or whatever they want one, and then they got the list of questions that come with it, which are fine. I love trying to help people and trying to get them going, but some just don't know or really care to know. They just kind of want the bugs in a box
Yeah,
versus, you know, keeping them alive.
yeah, the bee havers versus the beekeepers, basically.
Exactly, exactly. And that's where, I'll sell them to you, but I'm not going to run them for you.
That's it. That's the problem. Yeah, I've learned with the nuke business is a lot of it's fresh brand new beekeepers or beekeepers who've had colonies for a year or two, and yeah, they have so many questions, and they call you and they send you pictures of the hive to say, can you analyze what's going on in this frame when they take like a grainy cell phone picture,
Yeah.
in the shade, and I'm like, I used to like jump at that stuff because I was so happy that people actually valued, what they if they thought I was a good beekeeper, I guess. And yeah, it does weigh on you. Well, now I'm getting kind of burnt out, and I'll answer whatever questions they have when they come and get the nuke, and I always tell them like write down all your questions, and I'll stand here and talk to you. But when you bring them home, I was like, you need to go join a local beekeeping club and get a mentor is the way to do it, and then they're going to help you just because. I just don't have time to do it
Right.
anymore. And it's not because I don't want to. I mean, I try to do the
Exactly.
podcast, obviously, I try to do the YouTube too to help, but um, man, it's like you're one person and you're stretched so many ways. And if you're the bigger you get, the more customers you have, and then even if you only got 100 customers, if they've only got one question each, it's 100
Yeah.
questions, and it's just
Yeah.
and spring is just crazy dealing with them. So I've really struggled to find a balance between trying to be helpful and not coming across as cold. It is tough, and I don't know. Do you guys have beekeeping clubs up there?
I'm actually kind of trying to start one in my area. There is one in a place called Logan and one in Ogden, but they're about 30 or 40 minutes away. Um, there's one, like I said, I'm trying to start one in my little local area, and
Mhm.
that's why I'm doing my YouTube too. I'm trying to just film and make videos of what I do in this area this time of year because it is so diverse. I mean, I love watching your videos, but what you do doesn't necessarily benefit me, this time of year. I could
Oh yeah.
maybe remember it and use it at a part of the year, but um yeah, for your club though, I'm trying to get one because I'd like to get a group. And I actually did a class a couple weeks ago and I had quite a few people. I had 12 people show up. I
Well,
was pretty impressed. Wasn't expecting quite that many. I know that's a pretty low number, but I was
no,
happy
still,
with
I
it.
mean, yeah, you never know when you put yourself out there.
Yeah, but if you, like you said, if you can answer questions kind of in a one time, like I don't mind going once a month and spending a couple hours asking all the questions, or helping the any way I can. But like outside of that, yeah, kind of do your history, or your research.
Yeah, yeah, I find that it's like, it's like going to me. It's like going to the local pet store or something, and you're buying an animal. Like, you gotta. have some basic knowledge when you're buying that animal, like,
Right.
and then if you're confused on a couple specific details, then it's fine to ask the pet store owner. Like I wouldn't go buy a boa constrictor, not know anything about it, and expect the pet store owner guy just to like sit there and talk to me for hours and explain every possible scenario and every variation. And then I
Right.
wouldn't call and text the guy after. I would never even think about that. I'd maybe save some questions, and when I went to go buy a rat or something to feed the snake, I'd ask him a couple more questions, But I'm buying something. I'm doing business with him, and but it's different for us as a beekeeper. I don't know why, and I know because we don't have a store and we're not standing behind a desk, maybe, and we don't have hours and all that. But yeah, we get treated a little different. Like I had people like text me at like 11, 12 at night about something about a nuke or something. I'm like, man, like you know. I'm probably asleep, and if I'm not, I'm like, really? Can you just wait? Um, I don't know, and everybody's different, and I try not to take it personal or anything. I'm like, well, they are customers, they're doing business with you, they care about your
Right.
opinion, right?
Right.
So,
And that, yeah, it's hard.
yeah, it's just tough to find. Yeah, it's hard to find that balance. And we'd had our first little beekeeping class. I guess it was last year or something. Yeah, way more people showed up than I thought, and I couldn't handle it because I don't know there was like so many people and they were all some of them had never seen bees in their life and some of the guys showed up had like years of experience and you're trying to talk to how do you talk to people that way I'm not going to
Yeah.
talk to a new beekeeper the way I'm going to talk to a veteran beekeeper
Right.
and they don't even understand what a frame is or what brood is or whatever you're trying to
Yep.
those words.
That's what I noticed in mine. I had some that kind of had a basic idea, and then I had some that were like, "What's a hive tool?" I'm like, "Oh man."
Yeah. That's why you got to break it down and be like, no, this is new beekeepers, intermediate, advanced, and which we had ours, and I was like, brand new. I want people with no experience, and then we had people with years of experience show up, and they were kind of like talking over me, like, oh, you mean this? And I'm like, come on, man, like. I'm trying to explain the hype tool. I was showing them how to light a smoker, how to zip up a bee suit, that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, beekeepers are just kind of wacky. I've learned like you've got to be a little crazy to play with bees. I think
Yep.
everybody does.
Yep.
So, and some of us are a little crazier than others. And so I now I'm kind of used to them. Like, oh, there's that crazy old beekeepers coming over here to whatever talk about some kind of weird technique of whatever. But and
Yep.
it's I don't know. It's a cool community and it's an awesome world. Really, at the end, it's really. I think it's interesting. I mean, you obviously think it is interesting because we wouldn't be doing it, I suppose, if we didn't.
Right.
And that's pretty awesome. So, what plans do you have for your operation there? Are you just planning on growing it, or
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna get over 100 colonies. I don't have any plans of getting that. I want to get to just where, the 40 I have or whatever. I want to be efficient with them. I want to have quality over quantity because,
mm-hmm.
I could definitely probably find myself making a whole bunch of splits and then not keeping up and, finding that balance. And that's the other thing too is I've been pretty slow. Well, some people might think I haven't been, but I've like my wife, but
Yeah,
I feel like I've been getting into it pretty slow. I mean, I jumped into it feet first for sure,
mm-hmm.
and I really enjoy it. But I don't know. I don't really know what's going to happen. I want to keep it going. I got the farm, I got the tractors and some equipment to use it or to help move pallets and stuff. I got, my son and stuff. I kind of want it to maybe be something that if they're interested in the future, I can kind of have a foundation built for them. And
Yeah,
if they want to get involved as a hobby or sideline or whatever, it's not that I expect them to grow up and be commercial beekeepers because I don't, but
yeah,
just options. My father had the farm and there for a while, I didn't necessarily care about the farm. I wanted to go hang out with my buddies and chase the girls, and
yeah,
you know, that was funner than driving a tractor. But now that
mhm.
I'm a little older, I'm like, holy cow, look what I got, and have this opportunity. So if I can kind of have stuff ready for my kids someday in the future and show them, if I can get them playing in bees. I won't have to worry about them chasing too many girls. So that's kind of my, I don't know. I got them just got them, and I don't know what my I don't know what my full-time future plan is with them, you know?
Yeah, but that's okay, and that's the awesome thing with bees is you've got so many options with whatever you want to do, whether it's
Yeah,
keeping them as a
taking it.
hobby or commercial, sideliner, nukes, pollination, honey, whatever, or just you just want to sit there and watch them fly in and out of the hive all day. I mean, it's such a varied field, like, and that's why I want to talk to you and different people because everybody just has that different viewpoint, and everybody's pretty is right on it, It's that's what I love about beekeeping.
Yeah. So just quick, I won't get too into detail about it, but they I did a podcast with Bruce. I don't know, people on here probably know Bruce Bees down there in Alabama. And they pretty much saved my life. They really did. I was a pretty heavy alcoholic, and I quit drinking, and I got into bees, and it became my new addiction. And it it's just something about those bugs that just they're phenomenal, and I love taking care of them, and I love having them in my life. And to me, they became a purpose. They serve more of a purpose to me than just honey or pollination. They keep me sober, and they keep me, you know, that's really, if you really want to get down into the nitty-gritty detail, that's why I have bees, is so I don't drink alcohol, because when I do, I'm a mess. And I've been divorced twice. I'm pretty young. I was in the military for a while, and I just, got a lot of things. So the bees are what keep me grounded and keep me sane.
They do. They do have like they do create a structure and a motivation to just get up
Yeah.
and keep going. No, I 100% agree with you. Yeah, I've been through my fair share of struggles and these just they're my motivation to get out of bed every morning. They are.
Yep.
And no, they're wonderful. Well, okay, man. It looks like our time's about to run out again. And
Man.
is there anything else you wanted to say?
Nope. Thanks for having me on.
No, no, thanks so much. I appreciate it. It's pretty cool. I hope this turns out okay. You're my first non-local interview, so we'll have to hopefully everything will turn out smooth. I
Well,
guess I'll have to
that'll
find out.
that'll open a lot of doors for you if this works out well.
Yeah, it will, and I'd love to have you back on in the future and give me like an update, or find out how it's going on over there in spring or something. I
Yeah,
just
for sure. Let's do it.
yeah, that's pretty cool, and I'm glad we were able to link up. And yeah, but yeah, give your name again, where you're from. Mention your YouTube channel too. I can't remember if you gave the
Yeah,
name of it.
Barker's Bees and Honey. You'll see the little symbol. It's go in there and search it. You can also find me on Instagram or Facebook, and there's links tied to all that stuff. So Barker's Bees and Honey, just here out of northern Utah, and yep, just a beekeeper.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thanks so much for being on, and I guess I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Pollen Nation Podcast. I'm Matthew Walker from Walk in the Woods Apiary. We hope we have answered a few of your beekeeping and pollinator questions. Please share your questions and comments to our Facebook page at the Pollen Nation Podcast.